Hey, welcome back. In all my videos about playing bots recently, or my daily tournament recaps, I've neglected to mention that I'm continuing to play real people in rapid games like this one that I'm showing here. And the reason this video is titled Signs of Improvement is because recently, for the most part, it looks like I have eliminated just hanging pieces and one-move blunders, which at my level is pretty significant. I still do it once in a while, and I think almost everybody at the 1,000 point ELO rating does. But most of the time, I'm reminding myself to do that blunder check. Is this piece guarded? Can they attack this piece on the next move, and can I do anything about that? What I'm working on now is the positional blunders, most of which I still don't understand. Sometimes, if I follow the computer evaluation out far enough, I can see that, so many moves later in the game, having that pawn there comes in handy for some reason. But I'm still working on that. I'm taking encouragement from the fact that I'm working on that, because that's a level up from where I've been in the past. Another thing I'm working on is trying to evaluate the position in the middle of the game, because you can see right there various suggested moves for my opponent, all of which show that my opponent has a slight advantage here. I had actually evaluated this position during the game as me having a slight advantage. We're equal on material, each having lost a knight. We both have all 8 pawns. One difference is that they have doubled pawns, so I subtract a little bit from them. That's an advantage for me that these pawns are doubled. I have a piece, a minor piece in the middle of the board that's protected, kind of barricaded in there. If they try to take it, then we're doing all kinds of damage in here. The only advantage that I really saw for them, two slight advantages for them, is their king is castled safely behind a row of pawns with a nice little bishop back there. The bishop is protected by this knight. And the other thing is this semi-open file, which is to their advantage. That's why I guess you can see that the evaluation bar right there below me is showing that their top move is this and their second top move is this. It's because of this open file. But I evaluated the position as pretty close to equal, but me having the advantage due to this initiative, this pawn storm going here. And I did not know that pawn move gave the advantage back to me. But it did. And then that move gave the advantage back to my opponent. Slight advantage, not huge. But then here, that move gave them a much bigger advantage. This is where I was talking about. I knew I wanted to bring these pawns in here to try to crack open the king side. And my thought was, if I moved the g pawn first, they could just slide their h pawn in there, kind of locking these 2 pawns here. I guess what I didn't see is that once this pawn is out of the way, if they did put the g pawn there, I could just take it. Yeah, I didn't see that at all. But anyway, maybe now I will see that. So hopefully that's another sign of improvement. But that turned out to give me the advantage back when they took my bishop with their knight, which to them probably seemed like a good idea, but they didn't realize that now their bishop's trapped. I did realize this is when they put their knight there. That was pretty good on my part. The bishop decided to take a pawn out with it. Now here, the computer rates me as a very slight advantage. I thought I was starting to lose the advantage here with these isolated doubled pawns and my opponent now starting an initiative down the side. Regardless, they take control of this semi-open file. I protect the pawn, and we move on. But here, the evaluation bar is going to go up and down over the next several moves, and of course, we don't know this during the game. This is something that I'm going to be working on. But I think, as you can see, I didn't have any one-move hanging of pieces. Whenever the bishop comes to threaten this knight, I protect it, even though the computer would have much preferred that for some reason. Yeah, see, I had no idea. Okay, right here, it wants me to castle. I never would have guessed that, since I've gotten rid of all these pawns that are supposed to be in front of the king when you castle. But here it wants me to castle. Or do this or this for some reason. Oh, it's because the queen is threatening this pawn. And check. Okay, now I see why it's wanting to do something there. Also, if I castle, that would put the rook right here lined up with the queen. And it would get my king out of this potential check. Okay, more slight improvements. But regardless, I did that and I lost my advantage. Now my advantage has dropped. But then they do this and I get my advantage back. Had no idea that this happened while we're playing the game. I take the pawn, I've got the advantage, and that's what I wanted, was that pawn to take so that I can say check. The computer does not want me to say check. It says that's the third best move, but the first best move is to put this rook lined up with the queen, and the second one is to protect that pawn. So yeah, I said check, but the idea is to have the initiative to keep pushing. I've learned that the opponent doesn't have time to execute their own plans if I'm the one making the decisions and pushing. But here, I went after the bishop. Turned out to not be a great idea, but the opponent gives me the advantage back. So now I go after the bishop. We keep moving. I do the right thing here, and I have a 7.4 advantage. Only now, if I do this, do I keep the 6-point advantage. Threaten the queen there, or keep nearly a 6.5-point advantage by doing this. But instead, I push that pawn, which takes away half of my advantage. And now I start falling apart. But here, I'm still up a piece, right? And both queens are about to come off the board. Right here. They decide not to take my queen because they see this check. And all I had to do to maintain my advantage was to get the king out of check. But instead, I gave away... Oh, when I looked at this before, it said mate in 13 at this point. I guess the computer hasn't seen it yet. Because they can come right here, infiltrating from behind. And then I'll have to go up here. And it becomes this whole... and then they take the queen. And then it becomes really bad for me. But they didn't see the coming down here and decided to trade to get the queens off the board. Now suddenly I have a huge advantage again. Okay. Now where did I give away this advantage? I still have the advantage. Oh, I gave away a lot of it right there. What should I have done instead? Oh, I should have come here. I guess preventing a future check? Yeah, because right now, if my opponent checks, I can't continue guarding this bishop. I have to get out of check in a way that leaves this bishop hanging. Okay. Or it says I should have either blocked that potential check or come up here to protect the bishop. But I did not. I went after this pawn or this pawn. Fortunately, my opponent saw what I was seeing and went to protect one of the two pawns, giving me a huge advantage back. But I only get this huge advantage if I continue going after this pawn. Getting the bishop out of this threat, maybe, is what that bishop move is. But I didn't do that, so I gave away most of my advantage. Then they did this, and I lose my bishop, right? But they didn't see that I hung the bishop. Okay, but this is one thing that I want to point out, that this wasn't a one-move loss of the bishop. It was here that I should have protected the bishop or blocked the potential check. But instead, it's 2 moves later, 2 full moves later, that I now have to abandon guarding the bishop, which I do, and now they can take it. So it's not the same as hanging a piece in one move. But it is something that I need to work on. Anyway, they didn't take it. But I gave away the advantage right here. I still have it. All I have to do is come forward toward this rook. Let them have mine for theirs. And I end up with an extra piece. But instead, I moved out of check the wrong way. And they saw it. And I lose the rook. So, from then on, it was downhill. And I lost on time. But anyway, I hope this game kind of illustrates how I've improved my game, and then when I do make mistakes and blunders and lose the advantage, it's very often something that doesn't take effect for 2 to 3 moves down the line, like losing this bishop, which they still haven't taken, but they will. And so I'm going to keep working on that, trying to see those 2 moves in advance, 3 moves in advance, where I could protect that piece, ahead of time. Anyway, thanks for watching. Hopefully you're having as good a luck as I am at getting better. Even though I lost this game, I think it shows how I've improved.